Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 6th PHP Serbia conference. My name is Miloš Maksimović, and it is my pleasure to be your host during these 2 days. Together with me, we shall have my colleague Miloš Urošević in middle track and track B. This is by far the largest conference we have ever organized. There is as much as 600 of you in here, coming from 24 countries. This year, more than 50% of guests are coming from abroad. Let me thank you for that, since that is another proof of our reputation. Also, I would like to ask you for a big applause for our 20 lecturers, 2 of which have yesterday already started this PHP Serbia adventure by taking part in 2 fantastic workshops. When organizing events of such scale, naturally you need sponsors, so let me thank them for their strong support. Please let me hear strong applause for our main sponsor, 3rd year in a row, Performance Technologies and ESAM Advertising. Thank you. As a gold sponsor, this year we present you the new kid in town, Factcool Company. Right after that, there are silver sponsors, Blackfire, Platform, Catena Media, Hello World, Mainstream, and mCloud. Our bronze sponsors are SiteGround and Content Insights. Neighbors helped us in creating our official application, and if you haven't already, please download it to your smartphones. You will find quite a lot of interesting stuff there, together with evaluation of our lectures. For the first time this year, we shall have beer sponsors, and those are Platform and Deploy. And as for the refreshments, there are Guarana and Nescafe. Friends of the conference are Tricoder, GitHub, JetBrains, TMS, together with other media sponsors. We thank them all. Let me hear a big applause just once again for all of these guys. We couldn't have done it without them. So, as I mentioned earlier, because there are over 600 guests here today and tomorrow, in order to make sure that you can enjoy in all of the lectures, we have put together, while drinking coffee or beer, having a snack or whatever, we have prepared a special middle track. So let us see how do we look over there. Hello, middle track. Do you hear me, guys? Oh.
Yes, we hear you loud and clear, and this is like having a boat drinks on some cruiser over the seas, you know? I'm just having my first glass of cold beer, and I'm listening and watching to you, so you don't have to miss a bit of a lecture, because right here, if you come, you can do it from there, from the track A or from the track B, but you can come here on the middle track and have your own lazy bag, have your own glass of beer, maybe a glass of juice, and maybe something to eat. You get your pair of headphones, and you can watch the lecture for yourself and enjoy in the same time.
Okay, so you want to tell me that I can go up there, have a beer, have a snack? I don't actually have to be here.
I have one ready for you right now.
Okay.
When you come, it's going to be cold.
Okay, so cheers, mate. I'm going to see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, thank you very much. And now, let me introduce you to the president of PHP Serbia Association, Aco Gagić.
Dobrodošli. Welcome. I'm proud to welcome you to the PHP Serbia Conference 2018. This is our 6th conference in a row, and in the meantime, we grew to be one of the largest conferences in the Balkans. I'm very happy and honored to stand here in front of all of you, since we gather in such a great number from all around the world. For the last year we had Rasmus Lerdov, the PHP founder, here on this track as a lecturer. So you can imagine the challenge that we had. You may imagine what kind of challenge we had this year in order to overcome that. But thanks to our incredible lectures, we managed to do so. And I would like to use this opportunity to thank you once again to join us. We really went an extra mile trying to make this conference even better. Yesterday we had inspiring workshops, and today and tomorrow we will have a chance to enjoy your beer and the coffee without missing a bit of our programming, just like colleagues say, on the middle track. New scenography, special developed app, a great number of activations, and are just part of this conference, which I hope you will enjoy. We appreciate your feedback very much, so please don't hold back. Of course, all of this wouldn't be possible without a great team in behind of it. Everything you will experience here is made by this team. And this team is so great that it has just 5 members. A very big thank you to Miloš, Nikola, Johnny, and Nemanja for pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into organization of this conference with me for the past 9 months. But who we are actually and how it all begins, I want to tell you a short story.
Anso, you know that saying where the picture is worth 1,000 words?
Yes.
So it must mean that video is worth 1,000,000 words, right?
Definitely.
So can we watch the video?
Exactly 6 years ago, a group of enthusiasts gathered with an idea to organize once a month a programmers' meetings where we would exchange opinions, experiences, and learn from each other. Very quickly, the meetings grew larger and so did the organization. We wanted to raise it to another level, and that allowed us to, after only a year of PHP Serbia started, to gather international speakers and educators from around Europe and the world. From the humble beginnings and an idea of gathering once a month, talking about programming over a cool glass of beer, we reached so far as to have the honor and pleasure to welcome on the last year's conference a keynote speaker none other than the creator of PHP programming language himself. What we believe really sets us apart is the entire experience. From the moment they land to Belgrade until they hear the last applause at the conference. And that is something truly unique. Patience, persistence, and constant focus are the 3 most important ingredients that are necessary to always be on top of your game. That's why it is so important to have endurance and to push forward no matter what, because nothing comes overnight. If you want international events that are rated at the highest level, happenings that people always love to come back to, because they know what to expect, and that is why for us quality is second to none. Welcome to the biggest PHP event in the region.
Johnny, Nikola, Nemanja, Milan, Aco. Okay, this is the time for the official start. So by the power invested in me, I pronounce PHP Serbia Conference 2018 open. And now for the keynote, we shall show a video. And I think she's ready. Eryn O'Neill is an independent PHP developer and tech lead based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, USA. She will talk about Project Triage and what to do when it all hits the fan. Eryn, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Oh, you talk back. They don't do that where I'm from. This is going to be great. There we go. Hello. I'm so excited to be here. This is my first time in Belgrade, in Serbia, in the Balkans, in Eastern Europe. You can probably tell from my accent that I'm not from here. I flew all the way from the middle of America, and it's a lot warmer here, and I'm really happy to be here. So, hi, my name is Eryn. I am an independent PHP consultant, so I freelance is another way to say that. Before I was freelance, I worked at an agency for 5 years. So that means that people would pay us to make websites for them, or other kinds of projects. I was on anywhere from 3 to 9 projects at a time, which means that I have had a lot of opportunity, to mess up quickly. One good thing about that kind of opportunity is that I have learned a lot of things that I am excited to come here and tell you about, so that hopefully you will not make the same mistakes I did. You can jump straight ahead to the end of this talk and make new mistakes. But on our way there, I'm going to tell you a couple stories. I've got a lot of war stories, let me tell you, but I'm going to tell you two. One about the technological side of things going wrong, and one about the people side of things going wrong. Strive for the best, plan for the worst. So this weekend, you're going to go to a lot of talks where they're going to tell you the best ways to do all sorts of things. The best ways to set up search, the best ways to deal with a graph database, best ways to work with Laravel or anything like that. And that's good and that's important. We need to be talking about that. But the reality is, stuff will go wrong. And knowing that it's inevitable that things will go wrong, we should have a plan for what we're going to do when that happens. So I'm going to talk about the ugly side. I'm going to let all of the other speakers talk to you about the exciting stuff. We're going to talk about what to do when it gets bad. I think most problems really can be put into 2 buckets. First, you've got your people problems. So planning, you thought one thing was going to happen, but a different thing happened. You've got clients. Now, since I worked at an agency, I literally had clients. I literally had people who came to me and gave me money, and then I built a thing for them. And then they went away. But if you don't have that, that's okay. You don't need that to get something out of this talk. Because you do have clients no matter where you are. Someone is using your software. Someone is telling you what to build. So I'm going to use my language, but what I want you to do is just interpret it however makes sense for you. Maybe it's your manager. Maybe it's your product owner. Maybe it's, if you're in a startup and you don't have any of those, maybe it's just sort of the idea that you need to make money at some point. And then we also have budget problems. So again, literally, I had a dollar amount that I had to work to, or people didn't get paid. You might not have that, and that's okay. What you really need to think about that as is the fact that you don't have forever to build something if you want to keep your job. So we're working under constraints. On the other hand, we've got technological problems. So those are things we're a little bit more familiar with, probably. Bugs. I mean, all software has bugs, but this is the kind of bug that wakes you up at 2 a.m. from a pager on a Sunday morning. You know, like those kinds of bugs. And outages, your server goes down, or it gets hacked, or something bad happens where you can't get to AWS anymore. You know, so these things where suddenly your software isn't available to people. I have one story for each kind of problem. We're going to talk about both of them. But I do need to warn you that everything I'm going to say is true, except for the parts that aren't. So I have to lie to you just a little bit, and that's because I am under an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. So I can't tell you enough about these stories for you to go Google my clients. That's really what this is about. So it's just details that are changed. There might be some specifics that I just can't get into, and you'll have to trust me that what I'm saying makes sense, yeah? Okay. Here's the thing, though. All projects involve people. All projects. So it doesn't matter what stack you're working in. Doesn't matter if you're Laravel or Symfony or Greenfield or JavaScript or Go or Android or embedded systems. The one thing that every software project has in common is that people are building it and people will use it. So given that, let's think of people as part of the stack. Let's think of people as part of the technology that we have to figure out. Because computers, bless their hearts, do exactly what we tell them to do, for better or for worse. So, in contrast, people are messy. People get hungry, and that makes them crabby. People get sleepy, and that makes them not work as well. And these might sound like design flaws, but we can't do anything about them. And really what they are is things that make us human and make us not computers. So we need to learn about how to interact with those facts and how to hack people a little bit. Because the thing is that people are kind of the same everywhere, which is why I can give this talk in America, and I can give it in Scotland, and I can give it here. Even though our cultures are all very different, biologically, neurologically, we're pretty similar. And that means that people can be hacked. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. My first story, hierarchy Jenga. Jenga is a game you may not be familiar, I'm not sure if it's here, but you basically have all of these little wooden blocks stacked on each other, and you have to keep taking one away. And whoever takes the one away that makes the whole tower fall, they lose. So my story is like that, but in a company. So let me set the stage for you. The project was a medical services company with locations all across the country. Now, this already probably doesn't translate very well because your healthcare system makes sense. Mine doesn't. So bear with me. Medical services company, they have locations all over the country. So it's a little bit like a McDonald's, where you have McDonald's, the corporate company, but then every individual location is potentially owned by someone who's kind of running it locally. A little bit like that, but for life and death. They needed to update their website so that their content was more flexible. They had a CMS, someone had built it for them, they outgrew it, and that's cool, that happens. We were feeling really, really good about our CMS prowess. We can manage some content with the best of them. So we were like, yeah, we got this. And then if only it stayed there, right? Because if it was that easy, I wouldn't be telling you the story. So there were a few things that made this trickier. One is that every location has to manage their own content. And this is actually something you probably see all the time and you just don't realize it. A hotel, for example. There's Marriott, they run their main website, but then every specific location needs to have control to some degree over what's on that website. So they need to say, here's how you get to our place, here's what our hours are, there's construction on this road, so it's closed down, you have to take an alternate route. They have to have control over that. But you need to find a balance, because if you give users too much control, you get MySpace. We don't want that again, not under our names anyway. So we had to find this sweet spot between giving them enough control and not giving them so much rope that they could hang themselves. That's an idiom in America. I just realized if you've never heard it before, that sounds dark. So I'm sorry about that. The other thing is they were bringing a newly purchased company into the brand, which sounds really marketing-y, and it is. So as confused as you are by that, so were we. Spoiler alert, that's just not how it works. You can't just be like, hey, nerds, fix this, because we're not marketing people, we're technology people. But they thought we could anyway. And then finally, they already had a bunch of brands. So here's another way in which America's healthcare system is bonkers. Inside of a hospital, which is a company, you have multiple other companies pretending to be part of the hospital. So maybe the people who do the x-rays are actually a company that just focuses on x-rays. They're just really good at that. Or maybe the company that, the people doing the blood draw are actually just a company that does phlebotomy. So they're within these hospitals and they're separate companies, but they need to pretend that they're the same company. So now they want 18 different things on the website. Basically, none of this makes sense. And it's become our problem. But okay, you know what, whatever, like we solve problems, that's what we do. We build software, we figure out how to solve problems, we'll get it, it's not a big deal. Except, we couldn't get them to sign off on anything at all. It's supposed to be a 1-month planning process. 4 months into it, we were still planning. So that is 4 times as long as it was meant to be. It was so frustrating. Because we're not PMs. We're not product owners. We're not visionaries, we're makers. We are here to make things. And after 4 months, all we had done was talk about making things. It was awful. So this was really frustrating, and we needed to figure out what we were going to do about it. So at this point, we were like, okay, let's take a step back, and let's examine what's going on here. So we asked ourselves, why won't they sign off on anything? Like, what's going on here? Why won't they agree to anything being final? And it was really obvious to us as a team, that they were indecisive, they couldn't make a decision, and they weren't taking this process seriously. It's definitely not actually true, but it felt that way. Because they're spending so much of their own money. I mean, they pay us by the hour, right? Like, it didn't make any sense to us that people could take that long, waste that much time, and tell us that they wanted to be building something. We didn't know what was going on here, but it just felt like the only people taking this seriously were us. But that's obviously not true. Probably they were taking it more seriously than we were, because they were just one of our many projects, but a website is a business's entire deal. That's the whole thing they have to work with. So if they don't have this website, they can't make money. So we had to look at this first pass of our emotions. When we were frustrated, we were down in the weeds, and we were trying to figure out what was going on, and our first instinct was to blame them. But that isn't useful. So what we did was something more useful. We first recognized that they're people. They're human beings with complex behaviors, thought processes, emotions. Remember, people get tired and it makes them not work well. They get hungry and it makes them crabby. They get pressure from their boss and they stop acting in rational ways. So we had to remember that there was more going on with them than we could possibly know about. So what we did was a technique called the 5 whys. This is an old idea, part of root cause analysis. It's very simple, though. You just ask why 5 times. And the idea is that every time you ask, you're going to get closer to what's actually going on. So let's walk through this. Why won't they sign off on the UX? Natalie, not my client's real name, wants to change the sitemap again. Cool, we knew that. Why does she want to change the sitemap? Well, she thinks the marketing pages aren't prominent enough. Cool, whatever, we knew that. So 2 whys in, we're not really anywhere yet, but we're getting closer. Why are we just hearing about this now and not last week when she told us it was good enough? When we were told that the spec was finished? Well, she just heard from the marketing people yesterday. Okay, so now we're 3 questions in and we have new information. And it's weird information, because why wasn't she talking to them already? Why did they not say anything until yesterday? She didn't show them the map until it was final, which is bonkers, bananas. Because they're the people who have to live with this decision, right? And we're like, we have really different definitions of final, because final means I'm going to go code it. But she was still soliciting feedback. So we're not even all the way through, and we're already learning new things. Finally, why didn't she show them sooner? Well, it's too hard to work with the stakeholders, her managers, her bosses, so she just avoids it until the very end. This is useful information. This is something we didn't know and something that we can actually do something about. So knowing that she's avoiding them gives us an opportunity to figure out how to get out of this 4-month cycle, right? So this leads us to a chance where we could have a resolution. And I felt like that person jumping in the water, because I was like, yes, we can maybe make a thing. So that resolution looked like 4 things. First one was empathy, and I know the E word, people. But here's the thing. This might sound like it's someone else's job. This might sound like it's something your PM should do, or it's something that your manager should do, or the owner should do, or the business development person should do. But that's not true. Because the only reason we were able to keep making software is that we figured out this people problem. So this should be something in your toolbox, just as much as design patterns, or different libraries, or different software solutions. You should have people solutions. Because sometimes the technology is not the hard part. The human beings standing in the way of the technology are the hard part. So we used empathy. We went to her and we said, hey, let's be honest, this isn't working. What's going on? Because we approached her with empathy, because we met her where she was at, instead of us being frustrated and blaming, we said, talk to us about you. We were able to actually have communication. And she told us things that she didn't think were relevant to the project, like the thing about the stakeholders. Because when you connect with people on a human level, they're going to let you in. They don't know what you need to know to get the job done because they're not you, but you're not going to know what questions to ask if you try to just walk down a list. So this openness helps us get through this part too. Being honest with her and communicating with empathy built trust up. So then she would tell us these things. And finally, it let us be flexible. See, the place I worked has a really, really specific process. They literally wrote and published a book about the way that they run software projects. So we felt pretty solid about how we do things. But in this case, we had to flex. So what we realized was we needed to give them maybe like a slightly different kind of deliverable so that she could shop it earlier so that that process wasn't so painful. The bottom line here is that most project and people problems are the result of mismatched expectations, a lack of communication, or probably both. Because when our expectations aren't aligned, it doesn't matter what you deliver. They're going to be mad because they didn't get what they thought they were getting. And if your expectations are misaligned, it's probably because you didn't talk. So we need to try to bridge this gap. Because how many times have you written a feature and you got to the end and you showed it and you were proud and excited, and instead of someone being excited with you, they were like, what? Why does it do that? And that's just mismatched expectations. So it can feel really bad to have that conversation sometimes up front where someone says, I want this, and you say, you can't have it, for these various reasons. But it feels less bad than you going through an entire process and them thinking that at the end of this they're going to get something, and then they don't get it. I hit go too soon. So all in all, these people things, you don't have to be great at it. You don't have to switch your career and go into management or go into tech leading or go into account management. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that pretending that we can build software in this perfect vacuum without any human interaction is false. And if you got into this industry because you didn't want to work with people, you got lied to, and I'm sorry. Because that's not how it works. Software is getting more and more complicated. It used to be that 1 or 2 people could build an entire company. Now, just to launch a splash page, you need a front end and a back end and a designer and a UX person and a PM and a QA. I mean, software is complicated. So we're only going to have to deal with more of this. However, we also have to deal with the technical. So let's move into that. If you've been holding your breath, the people part is done. Well, it's not done, but I'm going to be more sneaky about it. We're going to talk more explicitly about programming stuff. So this story is more money, more risk. Project. Have you ever seen those websites where they're like, click this button, and if your race car comes in first, you win a Starbucks card? They're pretty big in the US. I don't know as much about here, but they're just a marketing tool. It's something these companies use because a billboard costs the same amount of money, but they can't stalk you all over the internet. So there you go. They're a marketing tool. Sometimes it feels like these are all fake, and some of them are probably scams, but a lot of them are real. So if you take nothing else away from this talk, enter all of these that you can find, because your odds are super good that you'll win something at the low, low price of a little bit of your personal data, but you're already on the internet, so whatever. However, there are, again, challenges. The first one is that in America, the online programs promotions are legally regulated. So you have to follow very specific rules to make sure you're not running a lottery, because only the government can have a lottery, and to make sure you're not inventing an online casino, because those are pretty strongly regulated. So you got to follow laws, and then you have to follow the laws of all 50 states. There's a lot of lawyers involved. It gets complicated. And because of that, there's real potential to get sued or fined. So you make this stupid little website, but you can actually lose money on it if you do something wrong and get sued. Also, people will do things well beyond reason to hack your site and get a $5 Starbucks card. It is absurd. It's like the amount of time that people put into hacking these websites. They could just get a job and buy some Starbucks and have money left over. But they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because it's fun for them, not fun for me. But that means that these websites get built with like banking level, like sort of security practices, because they have to. Because even though a $5 Starbucks card isn't much to one person, in the aggregate, it's a problem. And it's all real money. So if I'm giving out coupon codes on a website and someone hacks my website and gets the coupon codes, now they have those codes and I don't have them. That's real money that got lost. And you can't always tell which ones were hacked, so you can't necessarily just turn them all off. So we gotta be really careful. So I'm building these stupid sites for Starbucks and Budweiser and Corona, and I have to pretend that I'm building a website for HSBC and Capital One and MasterCard. It's ridiculous. It's kind of fun, though. It's both ridiculous and kind of fun. So, my bad morning. I woke up to my email, just full of error messages. Marketers love to launch these things at midnight. It doesn't make sense, because it's not like someone sitting there being like, all right, it's gonna open 12:01. Like, no. But I think it makes them feel very satisfied that it's like midnight to midnight. So that means I'm always up at midnight launching these stupid sites. And then, you go to bed at whenever, and next morning I probably slept in because I was up really late. Wake up and see all these error messages. And I'm like, crap. So I have two options at that point. I can freak out. I can jump on my computer, fix it in production. I could maybe fix it before anyone else had to know, or before anything else was lost. And then I wouldn't even have to admit that I made this mistake. Or I could not do that. The first one was really tempting, though, because in a moment like that, you get full of adrenaline. And our brains are really bad at telling the difference between my website went down and I am being chased by a lion. We have 21st century software on 0th century hardware, right? Like, that's what we're doing here. That's not my quote, by the way. Don't tweet and said that that's my quote. Someone else's. But so we have to acknowledge that we're going to get this adrenaline rush from something like our website, and you just got to breathe through it. So we're going to talk in this half about some ways to deal with that psychologically and deal with it from like a process point of view. You got to have a plan. So like I said, I could have just jumped into action. I had a pretty reasonable idea of what had gone wrong, but I might have not been correct about that. So instead of just doing it, I stepped back and I made a plan. Making a plan is super important because in those moments of panic, of not being able to keep it all in your head, that plan is going to help you figure it out. I am a huge nerd about checklists. Checklists are really just unit tests for people. They're regression tests for your process. So I live and die by these just massive sets of checklists anytime that I launch a website or I make a new project for a client or whatever. There's a book called the Checklist Manifesto. Someone literally wrote a whole book. It's like a book. And it's about checklists. It's glorious. It's actually a really entertaining book because it's like actually a book about all these really weird medical stories, pretending it's like a project management book, but it's not. It's just a book about weird medical stories. Because the guy who wrote it was a surgeon, and he worked with the World Health Organization to figure out a way to keep other surgeons from killing so many people in surgery, because that's the opposite of their job. So what they did was they noticed that surgeons were like leaving things in people. So you like go into surgery with 4 pieces of cotton, and you leave surgery with 3 pieces of cotton, and then like 1 in my pancreas. So that's a problem. And it's kind of bonkers because, at least in America, surgeons are considered some of the most well-trained, smartest, most specialized of any profession. And yet they were doing dumb stuff like leaving scalpels in people. So we had to figure out how to square this. And what they came up with, the World Health Organization? Checklists. It sounds really simple, but here's the thing. A checklist lets you outsource some of your thinking so that you have more of your brain left for the stuff that's actually hard. So they had checklists for all kinds of stuff, for the beginning of the thing, for the end of the thing. They had a checklist that was just everything they brought in, and at the end it would be like the doctor and a nurse, and the nurse would be like scalpel, and cotton. Sutures, oh no, they're still like I left the extra in him, and then they could get it out and solve it. And so they went from a double-digit percentage of the time this happening, like a really disturbingly common incidence of this kind of thing, to almost non-existent, just from using checklists. So that's part of why I'm such a nerd about them, because even though they sound like this really simple tool, they will let you put the stupid, boring thinking on paper so you can do the creative thinking, which is what your job is. Plans consist of 2 things: what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. So the how is kind of obvious. When I say you need a plan, that's what you think. But I want you to also think about what, because different problems are going to have different kinds of solutions. Maybe your website is down, and what you have to do is get it back up. But maybe you got hacked, and what you need to do is take your website down, because that's the best way to stop the damage from getting worse. Or in my case, I had this promotion that was going wrong. So my first goal isn't to fix that bug, it's to stop giving away free money. So if you have to know what you want to do before you're going to know how the heck you can do it. I'm a huge fan of incident response arsenals. So this is just a list of plans. Some of them are checklists. There's a pattern. But this is a list of plans that you have ahead of time for things that you know were going to come up. So some DevOps people, if you're in the room, you're like, yeah. And other people are like, that's impossible. How can you plan for things if you don't know they're going to happen? But you kind of do. Like, maybe your third-party vendors go, like, that ceases to exist. That API is no longer available. What are you going to do about it? Maybe AWS isn't responding to your pings. What are you going to do about that? You can also just have plans for the more generic stuff. Like, you don't know what's going wrong, but you can plan ahead of time about what you want to do when something comes up that you don't know how to deal with. Stuff like, are we going to chat in Slack, on Hangouts, Are we going to, like, how are we going to name that chat room? Who do I need to alert? How do I know if I need to call like a sysadmin or a director or a VP or the owner? What am I going to communicate to the PM so that they can tell the people who need to know what's up? So you can have all of these plans ahead of time, and then you can again, outsource some of that thinking. You got to build flexibility into your plan, though. So if you think of a plan as a series of steps, if you think of a plan as something where you're basically programming how a human should act, it's not going to work. Because the first time something goes wrong, the rest of your plan is useless. Instead, you want to make a plan that can withstand a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of something going wrong. A way to do this is a concept from the American Armed Forces, and probably everybody else's armed forces, but I'm not going to speak out of line, called commander's intent. This is the idea that if you let your team members work separately and empower them with what they need to do that, you're going to, in the end, work better together. So specifically, the commander's intent is a thing at the top of a battle plan. Because you could make a battle plan that says, okay, we're going to march 2 kilometers that way, you're going to turn right, you're going to shoot at all the bad guys, then we're going to turn left after 3 kilometers, and you'll walk up a hill. But as soon as there's like a bomb in front of you on one of those things, you're done. It's useless. So the idea of the commander's intent is you say, okay, the goal of this plan is to take that hill, to occupy that hill at the end of it. Then the plan is saying, I think this would work, and if it doesn't, I trust that you're smart enough, I trust that you're trained, I trust that you can figure out how to achieve this goal. Because your coworkers are smart. Even if you just thought, well, you don't know my coworkers. They are. They're good at what they do, they're trained. And honestly, even if they're not, you don't scale. So you're going to have to figure out ways to invite the rest of your team into a process. Having flexible plans and having a commander's intent at the front of that plan is a way to do that. Because no plan survives contact with the enemy. Similarly, no launch plan survives contact with the production server. You're going to launch a thing and it's going to go bad at some point. I thought after 10 years I would have one where that didn't happen. It still happens. No DNS transfer survives contact with someone else's IT department. DNS is the hardest simple thing in the world. It should be so much easier than it ends up being every time. Again, I've been programming for like 15 years. I really shouldn't, I couldn't teach DNS to like a room full of children. Like it's so complicated. And finally, no requirements document has ever survived contact with leadership or C-suite stakeholders because they want to look at that and change everything. So you have to know that your plans will be disrupted. That's just part of it. It's cool. We can work with that. It's really important in this flexibility to have a culture that is shame-free. That means don't blame people for stuff. Don't make someone the scapegoat. Don't use shame hats if somebody breaks the build. I mean, I know that a lot of people really like those. I'm the one on stage right now, so I get to say, I think they're a pretty bad idea. What they do is they make people reluctant to admit when they've made mistakes. You need to have a culture where someone will tell you when they mess something up because you can't fix a mistake you don't know about. So in my example, if I'm in a culture where I'm going to experience a big backlash for this honest mistake, I might have been more inclined to try to fix it in production and not tell anyone. It's still not a good solution, but in the moment, it might feel like my best solution. And that's a problem for a team. So you have to build an environment where people are willing to tell you when they messed up. And that requires a level of psychological safety. So an environment where people feel safe. You need to know when people mess stuff up because that's the only way to address it. However, you can make any mistake once, just don't make it twice. I want you to make new mistakes. They're way more interesting than making the same old mistakes. So we make these mistakes, we admit to them, but then we have to figure out how to prevent them from happening again. We have to circle back. So what we do is we look at our processes and we figure out how we can change them. Sorry, I hit the button too fast. Figure out how we can change them to keep mistakes from happening again. So that could look like going back and adding something to your checklist, making a new entry on there so that this doesn't happen again. Remember regression tests for process? Regression test your process. Add that thing that got missed. Add a check for it. It could look like automation. In fact, increasingly it does look like automation. And ideally, everything we do is going to be automated away, at least in the parts that are replicable in this way. That's a good goal. We'll get there one day maybe, but it's not realistic for everybody. However, the more things you can automate, the fewer things that you can let a human being potentially mess up, the better. So we want to try to circle back and figure out how to fix things. One common place that programmers fall down on this is bad interfaces. We build some ugly stuff, friends. I don't know why we do this to ourselves. I mean, it's because we're bad at designing pretty things, but it's still brutal. So we make these interfaces where it's so easy to mess up, yeah? I don't know if the news about the Hawaii missile scare made it over here. Cool, so that happened, for the people who don't know. Hawaii, one of the 50 states, sent out a text message to everybody who lived there, and they said, bombs incoming, take shelter within 15 minutes, this is not a drill. So people literally thought they were going to die. I mean, it's funny, it's definitely funny now, but you can giggle, it's okay. But it was not funny at the time. It was not funny to those people, and it was not funny right after when they found out that it was a drill. It was not real. Later, they put up a screenshot of the interface that they had to use to send out these text messages, because they were testing the system every month or so. In this interface, it's a list of links. None of them are named the same way. And the one for live, really sending the message, is right next to the one that's not sending the message. There's no confirmation dialogue of, do you actually want to tell an entire island of people that they're going to die? There's just nothing. And you look at it and you're like, yes, a programmer wrote that. It's completely unstyled. It's just default blue links, Times New Roman. I mean, it's bad. But it's like, when that's what we're working with, who's surprised when someone accidentally hits that button? So sometimes keeping these problems from happening again means looking at our tools and saying, all right, is it just too easy to run this shell script with the wrong arguments? Is it just too easy to click the wrong thing on here? Going back and thinking about thought processes just as much as we think about technological ones can sometimes be easier than automating your entire system. So you want to find different solutions for different problems. So to summarize, you're going to calm down when something goes wrong. You're going to make a plan. And you're going to prevent it from happening again. Because it's not done until you circle back. That incident isn't over until you've done the work to make sure it probably won't happen again. Or if it happens again, it will be a different way for a different reason. Remember, new mistakes are exciting. Old mistakes are boring. I really want you to go make new mistakes. Because if you're making mistakes, you're innovating. You're trying stuff. You're doing new things. And if you're not innovating in this industry, you're irrelevant in 6 months. You're irrelevant in 3 months. if you're doing JavaScript. So you have to always be trying to do things that will break stuff. You're still giggling about the JavaScript. I love it. You have to be willing to do things that'll break stuff. And you have to have a way to recover once you do. It's that easy. But it can require a pretty significant culture shift. If you're in charge of your teams, if you're a lead on your team, you have so much control over how safe people feel to mess up. Because you're going to set an example for what it means to admit when you're wrong. You're going to set an example for how you graciously deal with somebody else's mistake. You have so much power. So as you're going through the rest of this weekend, all these sessions, I want you to be looking at this stuff and thinking, yeah, this is really new and exciting. And I want to try the things that make sense. And I want to let my team try them, and I want to be willing to let them fail at them. Because if you never fail, you've never pushed yourself out of your comfort zone, and you've never tried or learned a new thing. So, how did I resolve my situation? Everything I told you. I woke up, freaked out, gave myself a couple minutes of panic, because that's sort of unavoidable. And then I did my best to calm down. Calming down in panic is just a skill that you have to practice. I can't tell you how to do that. You just got to practice it. But what you can do is that plan. So I contacted my team and I said, hey, this is happening. I think I know what's going wrong. I'm coming into the office right now. When I got there, I grabbed a coworker who was pretty familiar with that part of the system, and I had him physically sit next to me. So it was like pair recovery, basically. And I made a list of every command I was going to run, and I had him look at it, and I said, does this make sense? Does this seem right? And he said, yep, that makes sense to me. That is what I would do. And then he sat there and watched me type all of them in. 2 sets of eyes to find typos, 2 brains to figure out if something doesn't work. One of you can maybe still get to panic, and the other one can solve it. 2 people are just better than 1 people in a crisis. So had him sit next to me, ran through all of the stuff. It fixed it. Fortunately, I didn't give away all that much money. So that was a good day. But what I did do is circle back and keep it from happening again. So in this case, it was a script that has to be run every time and was really easy just not to run. And I would have loved to automate that, and for reasons that wasn't an option in this scenario. So what we did was we took our checklist and we just added a line that said, Eryn will always run this script. And then we added a second line that said the QA will make sure Eryn ran this script, because it was important enough to have 2 people look at it. And I never didn't run that script again. I broke a lot of other things, but I never broke that thing in that particular way. And then eventually we did circle back, and we found a way to make it a little bit more automated, a little bit more integrated, because the more you can remove people, the fewer points you have for those kinds of errors. So made a plan, calmed down, made a plan, executed it, and then went back to make sure I never needed to make that plan again in that particular way. We're going to have a lot of great sessions this weekend. I hope you learn all of the best ways to do things. And I hope that when you do make mistakes in trying these new things, you give yourself a little bit of leeway and a little bit of forgiveness, and you extend that to your teams as well. Thank you very much.
Okay. We saw what to do when it all hits the fan, and we saw what happens when Eryn hits the stage. Thank you, Eryn, once again. Okay. Hope you had a good time here. Okay. And now let me thank once again to our sponsors. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Dan Milosavljevic from Performance Technologies and Mr. Alexander Ilic from ESAM. Gentlemen.
Hi, I am Dan Milosavljevic from Performance Technologies, Managing Director. And Alexander Ilic is...
Yeah, me as a lead software engineer and the office head of FISM advertising.
We are delighted to be overall sponsor this year of this conference. This conference is getting bigger and bigger every year. First of all, I would like to thank Eryn for excellent keynote opening of the conference. Thank you very much. It's fourth year that we support this conference in a row. And first of all, everything is about developers. We have every year more and more developers here. I would like especially to thank organizers who are very keen in our community and pushing every year, getting better and better. Second thing, this year we have really special speakers, so thank you very much. Alexander?
So, yeah, thanks, Dan. So, yeah, we are not those kind of sponsors which take the stage and make you bored here, so we will be pretty short this time. So, we would just like to invite you all to come by and visit our booth and to meet with our engineers so you can see which technologies we use, how we combine, how we make solutions. And, yeah, besides PHP, of course. And yeah, you're all welcome to visit us. And of course, we have some photo booths, so please come by, take the prizes. And besides that, we have a fresh beer from Germany, just came this morning, so you can take it. We have the booths on both floors, so please come by and talk to us. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, I see that part of you is already leaving for the track B. And now we shall have again a picture from middle track, where is my colleague Miloš Urošević. Because in track B, up next is Dr. Florian Kraus, Director of Software Development at Performance Advertising. He will talk about where will we be when the storm comes. Miloš, having a beer, right?
It's killing me, man. It's killing me to see you work from down there, and I'm doing just the same thing, only with cold beer in my hand. So you, yeah, it's true. It's true. I told you, it's like cruising over the seas. You know, you have cold beer, you have funny games here. You can take a reward, perhaps, if you win, and you can watch the lecture. Same thing from here. We give you a set of headphones, and you can watch the lecture, enjoy the beer, enjoy the snacks, and well, come join me. Come join me,
We're
people.
gonna switch. We're gonna switch.
Yeah.
You're gonna come here, and I'm gonna go up there. Okay. So up next in track B, right in behind of you, is Dr. Florian Kraus. Right? Cheers, mate. Okay. Okay. So guys, if you wanna see Dr. Florian Kraus, you just go upstairs, through the middle track, straight to track B, and on track A, here, we will have something else. Okay, we will have Luis Cobucci, who will try to decompose a live application with confidence. So please, give me a big applause for Mr. Cobucci.